Hey Rockets, I'm back again with Zane and the Hurricane. Remember, we are respectful, responsible, and safe, and we value people's time and we're willing to negotiate. I hope by now most of you have already had your graphic organizer kind of drawn up and you're keeping track of things. I added a couple of things to my organizer. From reading, figured out that we have a new setting, which is New Orleans, and a couple of you sent me photographs of your organizer showing me New Orleans. And we also have a new character, Miss Trissy, or Grandma, Zane's grandma, that I add. If you agree with me, go ahead and add those on there. Don't think we've quite come to a problem yet. Don't think we're there. And I know we're not at a solution because we know that usually comes at the end. And we're using this organizer because we're reading literature. That's right. So we're thinking about our story elements. So when we last left off, Zane had already arrived in New Orleans to meet his great grandmother, Miss Trissy, for the first time. Miss Trissy is his dad's grandma. And who remembers what happened to Zane's dad? Think about it for a minute. His dad what? If you were thinking that his dad died, you are absolutely correct. Remember, his dad died. And his mom didn't think he had any relatives. And then, boom, they found Miss Trissy. And so Zane agreed to go see her, remember? Because he agreed to go see her if only he could take Bandit with him. And then they allowed him to take Bandit. So, wait a minute. Miss Haynes just did a retell. I hope you were doing it with me and nodding your head if you agreed with any of the things that I said. So when we last left off again, he had made it to New Orleans, and at first, remember, he was kind of scared of Miss Trissy, and now she's talking to him, and he's starting to warm up a little bit, and he's looking at some photographs, and remember, somebody had their arm around somebody, two boys, and we were trying to figure out who they were. All right, let's get started. There are lots of framed pictures on the wall and a drawer full of loose photographs, most of them really old. She shows me a small faded snapshot of two boys about my age. They have their arms around each other's shoulders and they look real happy. They come into my care after their mama passed. This your daddy, she says, touching one of the boys with a thumb. James, that was his little brother by less than a year. They both in heaven now. Oh, I think we were able to answer our question. So those two boys, one happens to be Zane's dad and his younger brother. So wait a minute. I think there's a comparison between Zane and his dad. Let me go back and reread that. They come into my care after their mama passed. So Zane's dad lost his mom, and Zane also lost his dad. So that's a similarity, I think, that they share. I asked why my father ran away from home. I expect he had his reasons, she said, not meeting my eyes. So his brother would have been my uncle, right? Had he lived, but he passed before you were born. What happened? I asked Miss Trissy. James got himself killed like so many other young men's. The old woman shakes her head, eyes brimming with tears. Does this make her feel good? Are these good memories? Sad memories for Miss Trissy. Later, child. We'll talk on that by and by. I don't think this is something that Miss Trissy likes to speak on. Fine with me, I thought. I was only asking because I thought she'd expect me to. Got himself killed, though. Hear that, and you can't help wondering if it was an accident. Like happened to my dad. Wouldn't she say died in an accident, killed? Sounds like somebody killed him. Which makes me wonder how it happened, who did it, and all that interesting stuff. But Miss Trissy changes the subject. So your mama got her a job with the U.S. Post Office. That's good, she said, sounding bright and cheerful again. That's a fine thing. My father did too, I tell her. He was delivering mail when he got run over by that old guy that hit him. Your mama said terrible thing, terrible. By any chance, do you like ice cream? There's ice cream in the freezer box. Myself, I love ice cream. That's another thing I like about the old lady. When she wants to change the subject, she usually mentions ice cream. So is Zane kind of getting used to being and feeling comfortable being there with Miss Trissy? If you agree, think about some evidence in the text that lets you know that he's starting to open up and feel at home with Miss Trissy. Chapter 4, Fly Like Superman. When I was little, me and my mom went on vacation to a bunch of theme parks in Florida. Hey, we live in Florida. One of the coolest rides was called Back to the Future, and I liked it even though I hadn't seen the movie yet, which I did as soon as we got home. It's about this kid that goes back in time before he was born and tries to stop bad stuff from happening to his parents. A totally cool idea, even if it can't happen in real life. Anyhow, that's what it's like at Miss Trissy's house. Like the airplane that took me to New Orleans went back in time, and everything is from 50 years ago. Her little kitchen is clean and shiny, but the appliances could be out of a museum. If they had a museum about old kitchens. The telephone is this big black thing with a rotary dial instead of buttons and a receiver. So heavy she has to lift it with both hands. Rotary phone, your parents might know about that. Nowadays, we just punch in the number. But back in my time, there was this thing called a dial. We had to go and let it go around while one number went through, and then we dialed the next number and the phone number and so on, and have to go around and spin back. Times have changed. The old tube model TV only gets one blurry channel because Miss Trissy doesn't have cable. Mostly she listens to gospel songs on an old table radio and sings along, which sounds kind of stupid, but is actually sort of beautiful once you get used to it. The other thing that's like going back in time is that she doesn't have air conditioning. Air conditioning might as well never have been invented as far as Miss Trissy is concerned. She doesn't believe in it. Says air conditioning will give you wetness of the lungs. Now wait a minute. Go back and think. How did Zane, when he first got in New Orleans, describe the temperature? Oh boy. Does Miss Trissy not having air conditioning seem like a good thing or a rough thing? Think about it. Think about what Zane said about the temperature when he came to New Orleans at first. Okay. That's what made me a widow, she said. Wet lungs took my poor husband Henry. I almost said it was probably the heat that killed her husband, but I don't have the energy right now to be a smart mouth. That's how hot it is. And that's mostly what I remember about the first 3 days in Smellyville. The heat that never stopped. How it was too hot to go outside in the daytime because the sun would hit you like a hot fist. I took Bandy out for his walks, of course, but we never went much further than the empty lot at the end of the street because he'd whimper from the heat and wanted me to carry him back in the shade. Even Bandy having a hard time. Goodness. Mostly he wanted to lie on his belly on the linoleum in the kitchen and pant and give me looks like the weather was all my fault. Nothing I can do about the temperature, you silly dog. Want a treat? Does that help? It usually does. In the evening, when it was a little cooler, we'd sit out on the wooden porch they call a gallery and drink sweet iced tea. And Miss Trissy would tell stories from the old days about when my father and his brother were little and they played Superman in this very yard. That was their favorite, Superman, because he could fly. Don't matter he was a white man, them two wanted to be Superman just the same. They tie towels around their neck for capes and stand on the gallery well and make whooping noises like they whooshing noises like they was flying. Gave me fits. What if they fell off and broke their heads? Couldn't stop them, though. They was determined to be Superman. And when Henry, he was my husband at the time, when Henry says there was only one Superman, how can you both be Superman? They say Superman can be anything he wants, even two people. They was that close, them two, peas in a pod. I wonder what's a synonym that we could use for peas in a pod. Remember, synonyms mean the same. Miss Trissy said that they were close. Peas in a pod. Think of a synonym for peas in a pod. I keep waiting for her to tell me what happened, how my Uncle James got killed, and why my father ran away. But she never quite gets to that part. By and by, she says, by and by. That's mostly all we do, really, is sit around and talk, because Miss Trissy is so old, she doesn't like to leave the house except to go to church. The true fact is, even though she turns out to be nice and all, it's really pretty boring with no games and no TV. And I'm thinking only a few more days and this will be over. And then school starts, which I'm sort of looking forward to, even though I'd never admit that to anyone. Saturday morning, the old phone rings. Bandit starts barking, and I'm shushing him when Miss Trissy hands me the receiver and says, "Oh, my Lordy, your mama, child." Mom calls my cell phone every day, usually in the morning. And for the past couple of days, she's been concerned about this hurricane out in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere, which was supposed to be over once it hit Florida. But the Weather Channel has got her all riled up. Something about a bullseye? I tried your cell, but it won't go through. Too many calls, I guess, which is no surprise, said Mom. The storm track changed. The storm didn't die out like they thought it would, Zane. It came back to life when it crossed over Florida and it hit the warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. It got really big, honey, really big. And now it's huge, big storms aiming straight for New Orleans. They say the storm surge might be 20 feet high enough to flood the whole city, Zane. You got to leave, Zane. You and Miss Trissy, you've got to get out of there now. I explained that Miss Trissy doesn't have a car, but of course Mom already knows that. She has a plan, which is totally typical of my mom because she always has a plan. You're coming home, Zane, she tells me. You and Miss Trissy both. All you have to do is get to the airport. Can you do that? We're going to stop right there today. Any setting, characters, has a problem started to develop. Now, think about those things. Jot down what you need to. Think about what we said. Today, check your emails. You are going to get copies of chapter 5. And I want you to read chapter 5 on your own. And we'll start out talking about chapter 5 when we pick up tomorrow. Okay? So, fill in. Any new setting, characters. Is there a problem that has finally started to occur? A major problem. We know we have minor problems, but is there a major problem starting? And you need to read chapter 5 when I send it to you. Until next time, Rockets.